on camera. Hey, everyone. It's time once again for the legendary Three Fates to look into their all-seeing eye to tell the future of some of our favorite characters. Today, they're turning their eye to the Griffin household and Family Guy. Peter Griffin. Okay, I'm just going to start with Peter Griffin. The family patriarch and his goofy antics finally catch up to him. In an effort to get Chris, the pervy old man finally calls Child Protective Services on the Griffins. During his testing, Peter is, kind of just be mentally unstable, as face he really is, and he's shipped off to the loony bin. While there, Peter tries to convince the he just tries to continue his weekly antics, and he ends up on one too many drug-induced comas. After years of being sedated, portions of his brain become fried, and he starts to, release into the. They don't do so. They release him into Lois's custody. When Peter discovers that Lois has finally moved on with the sea captain, he loses all control. He goes on the Quahog rampage. Many die on his killing spree before he goes into hiding. The years of fried brain scrambles finally catch up to him, and he just loses it all of his reasons out the window, and he forms the cult of Griffin. His followers wage an underground war on humanity, and Peter quickly becomes public enemy number one. For years, people live in fear of him coming to their towns as he leaves nothing but destruction in his wake. Finally accepting responsibility for allowing Peter to get this bad, Adam West dispatches the only one who can bring Peter down, which is that damn chicken. Within days, the epic battle of the century takes place, and Peter finally meets his feathery doom deep in Mexico after a brief run from his inescapable fate. The world breathes a little easier now as Peter's body is buried and thrown into the ocean. Rumor has it, though, that if you listen closely late at night, you can hear Peter's signature laugh come with the winds across the plains. His wife, Lois, always trying to salvage all the insane situation Peter gets her in, finally just has it. She barely holds it together when Child Protective Services comes to take her kids away. Court appearance after court appearance chip away at her stability. The kids prove to the system that they would be better off elsewhere. Even her youngest, Stewie, takes the opportunity to free himself from her grasp. With the judgment rendered, Lois finds herself childless and a widow, drunk and alone in her house, by herself. So Quagmire, of course, sees this as an opportunity and he takes it. But she rejects him outright, sending him into a world-class sex tour. A year later, she packs her bags and just leaves. She decides that, she doesn't want to have a destination in mind. She just goes. And it's that when she finds herself at the docks, staring at a help wanted sign. She convinces the sea captain to give her a chance, and Lois's life at sea is born. And it is there that she finds herself and the dashing sea captain. They have a beautiful, wonderful relationship at sea, and after Lois, forgets Peter's name, she gets the papers that she has to be in custody of him. Well, she does it for a while, gets rid of him, the whole thing happens, and it doesn't really bother her because she's on an island home now, and one day, everything just comes to be what it is. But Peter needs that custodian, and the courts are ordering her to stay away from the kids, and she just can't take it anymore. So, when he begins his stupid events again, she says it's time to draw the line. It's much worse now, and she just lets him go, keeps on her island, and it's just good to go. But the good thing about the island is that Peter's tyranny could never reach her there. She would often sit on the balcony and watch as the mainland burns under Peter's rule. And the rest of that, well, it's history for Lois. As for Meg, no one really cares. She just goes off, becomes a hippie with Haley. Whereas Chris, well, the court they also take him away from the only family he's ever known, and his new adoptive parents set to work on fixing what was wrong with him. He's sent to therapy and tutors to make him not quite so special, with quotation marks. He works out his issues with the evil monkey in the closet, his problems with the creepy old man who had indeed touched him in all the wrong spots, and of course his father issues. As he nears the end of his high school career, he goes from a failing dropout to head of the class, a star-studded athlete, an all-around swell guy. He goes to college and on a full scholarship for football of all things, and becomes a celebrity in the whole sports world. When the transition to movies happens, he falls back into his old ways and gambles away everything Charlie Sheen style. Despite the payoff of all his outstanding debts, he loses just this whole meaning of life by falling into adult films. And a tell-all book after his, bio dad becomes infamous. After a stint in rehab, He tries to make a comeback, but fails epically. He then joins Peter's cult and is even recognized by his, crazed father. Chris's claim to fame is that he's the one who takes out Joe, recently who was developed into a RoboCop of all things. It was a long, hectic battle, and his death whispers, he revealed plans to send in the chicken. So Chris, knowing this information from Joe, leads the cult and his father deep into Mexico, hoping to outrun the inevitable. After all is said and done, Chris sets up shop in little Mexico and becomes the mayor of a small town, and he's famous for hookers, and he just lives the rest of his life in so-called peace. Whereas Stewie, after growing up with world domination plans, followed by plans to be gay and everything else, Stewie just ends up being quite normal. Of course, he already knows that, once he gets old, he's going to be old. He did meet his future self, but he's decided he's going to change his fate. World domination is just too much work, and his experimental days leave him with a sour taste in his mouth. So he turns his wits to changing everything that he thinks is going to happen. He doesn't want to be the balding man from the future who found himself imprisoned in a cubicle hell. He creates for himself a new identity, a new life, and a new skill. He spends time as a hired gun, of all things, a grocery bagger, a lion tamer, and a marine biologist. He travels the world trying to piece together what he needs to change his future, but every day, stepping forward brings him closer to that inevitable future, and time runs out, and he becomes desperate. He concocts a kind of a mad machine to change his very being, but it opens a time rift that begins to tear apart the very fabric of time. So, with the world destroyed, he decides the only thing he has to do is he jumps in to seal it up. But knowing what will happen to him, he knows it's all over. Stewie's now erased from history and forgotten as the rift seals up. Leaving Stewie lost in space, we all weep a tear because we all like Stewie. As for Brian gets really old and dies. And he's stuffed by a necromancer that Chris takes him to in a drunken high stupor and finds himself possessed by a voodoo spirit that just won't let him drink alcohol. And he also has a fondness for imported cheeses. Brian uses his newfound abilities and immortality to keep insights on becoming a detective, solving the world's most impossible crimes Sherlock Holmes style. It is shortly after Peter's, rise of terror that Brian meets in secret with Joe and Adam West, and they devise a plan to send James Woods to eliminate Peter. But everyone knows that's not going to work. Then Brian stumbles upon the idea to send in the chicken. But it would have to take place off American soil, so Brian sends Joe on a suicide mission to get the ball rolling, to get Peter out of the country and on the run so the chicken can do his thing. Totally uninhibited by American politics. After the successful destruction of the cult of Griffins' grasp on the nation, Brian retires to the countryside where he's always wanted to be till the day the world ends. He is trying to finish that damn novel, one that's actually good, mind you. Guess being immortal doesn't give you all that much talent, but enough time. That's been this week's Desk of the Fate.